2 weeks out from my powerlifting meet, and I almost didn't catch this mistake with my training. I'm shifting out of volume work training, my normal training routine, into more of a ramp down, and I almost didn't catch this change that I needed to make for the water cut that I'm doing next week. So today I'm going to walk you through what the last 2 weeks of training is going to look like before my powerlifting meet, so I go in feeling good, feeling ready, feeling rested and recovered. Welcome back, boys and girls. It is Monday of week 18. I can't believe it. We are almost there. Week 18 of this 20-week cut. Today is going to be a heavy push day with a slight twist. We are exiting out of our typical volume training and instead starting to ramp down. We've got 2 weeks before my powerlifting meet, and then another 3 weeks left in the cut. It'll be 1 week after the powerlifting meet. But I'll explain the training philosophy for these last 2 weeks in more detail as we go, but I'll just tell you what we're doing for the workout today. We will do bench press, and we're gonna change it up slightly. We're gonna do a single top set with 2 back off sets, and we'll talk about what that means. And then we're just going to do a few accessories. We'll do some triceps, some weighted dips for triceps. We'll do some lateral raises and some tricep pushdowns. So nothing too crazy as far as accessory work as well. But I spent a lot of time last night talking to a good friend, ChatGPT, actually mostly Claude. Claude's my main AI assistant. Just double checking these last 2 weeks to make sure that my training looks good, that my nutrition plan is intact, and I'm trying to set myself up the best that I can to make sure that I can hit my target weight. I need to be at 181.8. That's 82.5 kilos. So right now, I weighed in at 185.8 this morning. I think my average last week was 186.5. I've gotten as low as 184 with when I've lost a bunch of water weight, not very aggressive water cutting or anything like that. So that tells me that I need to lose some fat and then plan an aggressive or a moderately aggressive, not super killer water cut, but a decent water cut before the weigh-in. So we won't go into all the details of the water cut today. I'm going to save that for another video, but I do want to address how my training is shifting to focus on ramping down and to make sure that I am recovered and not fatigued at all going into the meet. Then I'll also talk about how my initial plan actually needed to be adjusted because of the water cut that I planned with AI. And we'll just talk about how I used AI to do that stuff, why I made some of the decisions that I made, and we'll hit this bench press day while we're doing it. See you in a bit. So the top set that I'm doing today is a heavy single, and it's going to be 90% of my one rep max, which is 300. So that's going to be about 270 pounds. So my warm-up is going to be slightly different. Normally I do 50% twice and 75% for my warm-up sets, and that's of my working weight. So if my working weight is 260, I do half of that, call it 135 or whatever. So I'm going to actually start at 135 like I normally do, but I'm going to slowly ramp up to 270. So it'll look similar. It'll probably be 3, 4, maybe 5 warm-up sets before I get to 270, but it's not too different than my normal warm-up. I think for my next set, I'm going to just add 10 pounds on each side and do that 10 times again. So that's kind of similar to the 2 sets of 50% that we normally do. But we're getting a little bit of weight while still allowing myself to feel the stretch, get blood moving a little bit. We'll start ramping up from there a little bit more. The change I'm making for today is for my bench press, I am wearing my weightlifting shoes because I think these are what I'm actually going to wear during the competition so that I can get a little bit more contact with the ground. Having good contact with the ground is really important for bench press. And in the competition, you don't want your feet to move. You don't want them to come up. I know some federations are a little bit more strict than others and don't allow your heel to come up. So that's where an elevated heel like these squat weightlifting shoes would come in handy. So I just want to make sure I'm getting used to that. I'm also going to make sure that as much as I can, every single rep, I'm going to be thinking about the cues in my brain. I'm going to be thinking about down, and I'm going to hold it there for a second or two before thinking press and then going up. So I'm kind of imagining what that's going to be like and me trying to prepare for that, not trying to do touch and goes as much as possible. Second warm-up set, I've got 155. We're going to do this 10 times as well. So the way that the training plan was designed is to exit my normal kind of volume training where I was doing heavy push-pull legs Monday, Tuesday, Thursday with moderate volume training on Wednesday and Friday. So it's generally a best practice within a few weeks of your meet to start ramping your volume down so that your body is not broken down. You're not looking to build any more strength at that point. You're looking to basically just maintain it, and you want your body to be recovered. So what a lot of people will do is they'll ramp their volume down, but they'll keep their weight high. So it serves two functions. Number one, your volume comes down, which is good, easier to recover. But number two, you're training and keeping your central nervous system used to that heavy weight. And you can practice the motion and the form and the cueing, right? So for me, like I said today, I'm going to be listening to cues in my head. When I do my bench press, I'm going to have whatever the lift and then down, and I'm going to wait a second or two before I think push or press in my head. So I'm really going to be focusing on trying to practice that form. And that's going to be coming to play because the top single heavy rep that we do today is going to be 270, and I think that's probably about what our opening weight will be. So this is a good trial run as well. We'll do another next week. I'll talk a little bit about what the final week looks quite different, but so this is a transition week from normal volume to almost like a deload week. In a deload week, I would still keep the weight heavy, but I'd still do my resets of, well, I would drop it down to 2 sets of 3. So I'd drop the volume down to 50%. So today what I'm doing is, the weight is going up on the first set, so I drop the reps to 1, and then we follow it up with 2 relatively lighter sets. So still 3 sets for me today. On the second 2 sets, we're going to do, what is it? I think it's 2 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 2. Either way, 3 sets of 2 at 82% or 2 sets of 3. I'll probably do 2 sets of 3, honestly. I'd rather do 3 full sets. So that'll be about 240, 245. And then we'll move into our accessory work. And our accessory work is never they're not compound lifts, so it's never super aggressive or super heavy anyway. But so that's the main philosophy, is this second to last week is a transition week. It's not a full deload week. We do want to have a heavy component to it, and we still want to have some volume, but we want less volume than last week. and then more volume than what we'll do the final week, if that makes sense. This is our third warm-up set, so I think this is shaking out to be pretty similar to our normal warm-up so far. This is 205. This is probably about 75%. And we'll do this for something that feels good, somewhere in that. Usually it's like 6 to 8 range. That's what we'll shoot for. As far as coming up with this training program, I'm not going to go into all the full details because I have a video for that where I tell you exactly how I planned the 3 to 4 weeks of training that I had for my powerlifting meet with AI. I'll give you the abbreviated version, and that is number 1, you need to give it context. I'll talk about what that means. You need to give it a goal and a role. So you need to tell it who it is and what it's doing for you. And then you need to have it double check its work. And then you need to ask for a takeaway, for a tangible, something you can take away and get out of the LLM. So context is who you are, what your background is, how it pertains to this particular goal. So for me, I just gave it everything that it would need to calculate my strength and my experience level as a lifter. I've been lifting this many years. I'm in the middle of a 20-week cut or 17 weeks, 16 weeks in, whenever it was. That's important information. This is my TDEE, and I'm eating in this much of a deficit. I've lost this much weight since then. Here are my typical, either I had my 1 rep maxes, or I say I typically lift bench this much for this many reps, right? So I give it all the details. And then the role that I gave it was something like, you're an experienced powerlifting coach. Come up with a ramp down, or not even a ramp down, just come up with a final 3-week training program for someone coming out of this push-pull legs routine, knowing that they are at this weight, they've lost this much weight, and that their target weight is this. So that's going back to the context, is that I needed to hit a specific weight division. Right. So context, role, and then the goal is a training plan should help them be somewhat at a peak. They should not be tired. They should feel strong going into the meet, but they should also be able to hit the weight class that we determined. So any kind of calorie maintenance or water maintenance that we need to do, water management, and then also how to manage the training itself as far as volume. And then double check your work. You can tell it to do that in the prompt or come back later when it gives you the first pass. Always have it double check, because it'll usually catch something. Say, hey, is this a best practice? Is this what people normally do? Hey, is there research to support this? And a lot of times it'll catch errors. And then finally, now give this to me in a bullet point outline that I can print, or give this to me in an image that I can put on a note card, or something like that. Something that you can take out of the LLM, because otherwise it gets lost and buried in there. So that's my real quick how to use an LLM to come up with your training program. In this case, specifically for me, it was like the last 3 to 4 weeks of training before a powerlifting meet. All right, last warm-up set. I just have 255 loaded on here, so that's a little bit more than what we had done. I'm just going to do this a couple times, 2-3 times, something like that, because we're really close to our working weight, our starting weight. Now, the problem that I had to address was when I originally came up with this plan. That was 2 weeks ago. I got an idea. I think I'll probably lose this much weight or not. Well, what had happened was I didn't lose as much weight over the past 2 weeks as I thought I was going to. I didn't adhere to my cut as much as I would have liked to. So it became clear that I was going to need to either adjust my weight class, which that may still be on the table, or I was going to need to come up with a little bit more aggressive of a water cut strategy. And so I consulted AI to help me come up with a more comprehensive water weight cut strategy, I should say. Not super aggressive. It's still safe. But what that meant was my original last week of training, I was planning on doing single heavies throughout most of the week. And it just became clear that since my water cut was going to start earlier in the week on Wednesday or Thursday, I needed to be done weight training earlier on. So, because it had me doing heavy squat on a Thursday, and I'm going to be pretty dehydrated by that point. So that just was not a safe choice. I recognize, and this is what I'll say, people. This is what I'll tell you about LLMs, right? They make mistakes. You can't lean into them for everything. You still have to be aware, and you have to ask questions. Is this safe? The reason why it was able to plan that is because I did the plan for my training in one session, and then in another chat, we were coming up with this water cut management. They didn't have context. They didn't know each other. The water weight conversation didn't know about the weight training conversation, and vice versa. So I had to look at what the water weight strategy was saying, and it was suggesting not training at all on a certain day. And I was like, you know what? I thought our original plan we were. And so I had to ask it and follow up. Hey, is there some conflicting evidence here? Is there a safety concern with doing this workout while cutting weight? And that goes back to what I said earlier about double checking, asking it to double check its work. Because a lot of times if you just ask it or give it a little bit of context for what to look for and what to double check, it'll figure it out and solve it for you. So I'll talk a little bit about what that looked like for me. I'm going to cheat just a little bit. I'm going to throw 10s on here so that we get 275 instead of 270 for our single heavy today. It just seemed easier, and I don't know, maybe I'll regret that, but I don't think so. So we'll do that. Got a couple minutes of rest. I'm resting a little bit more before I hit it, and then we'll do our 2 back off sets after that. I'll also add, make sure you stick around to the end of the video. 2 things you don't want to miss: my daily check-in and the physique update. Every workout that I do a check-in where I give you my weigh-in for the day, and we look at what my average weight is looking like and how that's meeting or not meeting my cut goals. And we look at the nutrition from the previous day. On Mondays, I look at the weekend, and I show you what my calories were, what my protein were, and how that fits into my goals or doesn't. And then Mondays, I usually do a physique update so that we get week by week, we can see how my physique has changed, because that is another really good way. You don't just watch the scale, you also look in the mirror to see how your body is changing when you're trying to cut or bulk. So stick around to the end for that. And then, as always, if the content of this video is helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We are well rested. Now it is time for the single heavy of the day. I've got 275 loaded on here. We will attempt to do this one time with good form and good tempo, pretending like we have someone giving us cues. I am going to give myself another couple of minutes of rest after that. It's typically a good thing to do when you do something really heavy. So I'll just give you the overview of these final 2 weeks. I think I mentioned it. This week is single heavies with back off and then accessory work. And then next week is going to be more rehearsals and then recovery. What that looks like day to day, today's heavy bench. We're still doing our normal Tuesday heavy deadlift and then Thursday heavy squat. And it's a similar thing. We're doing a heavy single as our top set this week. So I think it's about 90% of my 1 rep max for each of the compound lifts. And then we're doing, let me just look at the workout so you can see. I think for deadlifts, it's 2 sets of 3. I think I made it the same. 2 sets of 3 at each of them. It's somewhere 80 to 85%. is the second 2 sets. So a single heavy at 90%, and then 2 sets of 3 at 80-85%, something like that. And then each day we're doing either 2 or 3 accessory lifts. So today that's 3, and then like I said, it's weighted dips, lateral raises, tricep push down. When we do deadlifts, we're also going to do some pull-ups and some bent over rows. For leg day, we'll do Romanian deadlifts and calf raises. And then for Wednesday and Friday this week, it's up to me on how I'm feeling. It's not super important that I get a bunch of extra volume in. My Wednesdays and Fridays are typically moderate intensity workouts anyway, so I could totally do them, and they would already fit within the ethos of this week, which is to back off a bit. However, it is finally starting to be good weather here in St. Louis, so I went golfing for the first time in over a month on Friday, and I think I might try and squeeze a golf session in. And right now I'm eyeing Wednesday for that, and then maybe Friday just either probably just do a light, moderate workout or something like that. But that'll just help contribute to recovery. Golf is an excellent active recovery. So that's this week. We'll talk about next week. We'll talk about the final week in a second. We've got 245 loaded on here. That's, I don't know, somewhere between 80 and 85%. I don't really quite remember. And we're going to try and hit this for 2 sets of 3. So next week is week 4 from when I originally started planning this. It is the last week before the meet. The meet is on Sunday, and I think the weigh-in is on Saturday. And so originally we were doing rehearsal weight for my opening weight Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. What I realized was I was going to need to do some water manipulation, and that was going to start more of Wednesday. And then so Thursday I'd be in full throes of that. So because Thursday, Friday are the really aggressive water cuts so that I can weigh in on Saturday. So doing heavy squats while trying to purposely dehydrate just didn't seem like a wise choice. So what we came up with was to combine, basically do less work that week, because honestly, that last week you're not gaining any strength. The main priority is maybe practicing, but really mostly recovering. So this week, combine bench and squat on Monday. So that'll be my last true heavy day. And that's going to be just opening weight rehearsals. So I'll ramp up, do the opening weight rehearsal for bench. And I think I'll have to double check. I think I'm just doing 1 set of 1, right? And then I'll rest 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I'll do squat. So I'm going to combine those into one. I'm getting rid of everything else I'm doing, and so it becomes like a full body rehearsal day. But by doing those in the same day, it allows me then to hit Tuesday to do an opener rehearsal for deadlift, right? And so I'm done with my lifts for the whole week by Tuesday. So when I get to Wednesday and I actually start on the cut for the water weight, I don't have any resistance training left in the week. I still have the option to maybe go golfing Wednesday before I get too dehydrated. Thursday and Friday, I'm going to keep the activity pretty light, maybe some walks just to maintain a low level of activity, and maybe some stretching. But then I'll go hard on the water cut Thursday, Friday. Saturday is the weigh-in. I will refeed, try to rebuild my glycogen stores so that I go into the meet on Sunday feeling strong. So hopefully I will feel recovered. I won't be sore from anything. And I will, by refeeding after the water cut will help me meet my weight, because I plan probably being 183, 184 that week. And I need to drop another 2 pounds to make weight. So The water cut will help me meet the weight. Refeeding and rehydrating Saturday will be really important to feel strong going into Sunday. So that is right now the rough overview of the week 4 training plan. And I will do a separate video breaking down the water cut a little bit more because I think there's a lot there to unpack. All right, last bench press for today. Get another set of 3 of these. All right, up next, we've got weighted dips. Just gonna do 2 sets of 8. I think normally I'm 3 sets, so a little bit lighter than normal. Still got the full 80 pounds loaded on here though. So I already mentioned this a little bit before, but the reason that this final 2-week schedule works is because, and especially the last week, is I finish all the heavy work before I start the water cut. Right, so I had to combine bench and squat in the same day, but since they're different movement patterns, they're using different muscles, as long as I rest enough in between, it should be manageable. And then deadlifting alone on Tuesday, again, a little bit less work than normal, only doing a rehearsal. Again, it should be manageable. And then that's Tuesday. It gives me Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday for my muscles to basically recover. Even though I'll be still in a calorie deficit and cutting water weight, I won't be exerting my muscles too hard. So yeah, I've got 3 full rest days, as I said, and I do have that chance to restore my glycogen reserves and sodium levels the night before the meet to try and get my muscles feeling strong and good again. So that's why it works. And then I'll talk a little bit about why this week we're doing the heavy singles. I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but I'll just go over it again. It's really because doing that 90%, it's going to be about what my opening weight will be. So it helps confidence. It helps build, it's a form of practice, both for my mind and my body connection, but my central nervous system getting used to that heavier weight than I normally do. And then I add in that back off set, right, that we did. We did the 2 back off sets at 2 sets of 3. And that's to help keep some volume this week without crushing my recovery ability. I mentioned the CNS, the central nervous system adaptation without accumulating fatigue. And this isn't really testing. We already did my 1 rep max tests, right? So I'm not testing to see how much I can do. I'm really just rehearsing the opening weight. And that's what I'll do on the final week, right? It will be more of a rehearsal of the opening weight. The opening weight should be easy to do. That's the whole goal. It should be enough to push you a little bit, but it should be attainable. It's kind of an easy win that you can just check off. So that's why we're going to rehearse that with good form. I'm going to make sure I videotape. I'm going to move the camera to get better angle so you can see the angle of my squat and stuff like that. Make sure I'm getting the correct form. So that's why I've programmed these last 2 weeks to be a ramp down in volume, focusing on technique, and then also focusing on recovery, stopping weight resistance training, honestly just stopping volume work and giving me enough time to recover while also trying to do a little bit of water manipulation. So set of dips.
One thing I probably haven't mentioned is how this powerlifting meet training preparation has altered my original training plan, which was I was just going to do my traditional push-pull legs routine through the whole thing. And I had talked about adding cardio. So I did that for, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. But then when I made the shift to basically 2 weeks ago, when I decided I'm going to do a powerlifting meet, I shifted my training plan. I started doing my 1 rep max testing, and then I did some adjusted volume last week. Obviously, this week we talked about what my adjusted volume is, and next week is going to be focused on recovery. I just didn't really find cardio, especially hit and sprint type cardio, didn't really fit into those goals. So I have cut that out. Luckily, the weather has started to get a little bit better, so I am able to get some more walks. So low intensity cardio is still on the table. So I am trying to do walks. I am trying to golf. And that's really where, if I'm trying to get cardio, that's where I'm focusing, so that I don't I'm trying not to make myself sore, essentially, these last 2 weeks. That's the goal. If it makes you sore, then you worked out too hard. It's kind of the good rule of thumb for ramping down before a powerlifting meet. All right. Love a good lateral raise. We've got full 3 sets of these. Again, another thing that we touched on, but I do want to hit it again because I think it's important, is this AI aspect. I'm a big proponent of using AI to help you plan your training programs, plan your cuts, that sort of thing. But you don't use AI to replace all of your thinking, right? It's scary. You can do that. You can lean into it and just do it and not double check anything. You do still need to analyze and proofread the output. I'm a software engineer. A lot of times the analogy we use is that an LLM is like an overeager, somewhat irresponsible intern, right? They just want to get their work done and want to please you, and they might take shortcuts. They might not look through all the data. They might hallucinate. They might make some stuff up. And so you have to double check their work and make sure, did you check this? Does this follow best practices? So always have it double check. I think it would have been probably pretty dangerous for me to try and do heavy squat work while being dehydrated, trying to manipulate my water weight. And that's why when I noticed that, when I went back to get a more comprehensive water management plan, I noticed that it was suggesting lighter training. But I knew my other training program that I had originally came up with was planning on doing heavy squat, like a squat rehearsal. So I think by just simply giving it that context, say, hey, you two conversations don't know about each other. Let me introduce you to each other. Have you figure it out? What is the best kind of combination? How can we still hit all of our rehearsal weights but be done by Tuesday? And I was able to come up with a solution. Like I said, it's not the most ideal to do a bench and a squat rehearsal in one day. But if we kind of take away all the other volume, we focus on just that, we get plenty of rest, it can work. And then we can be done by Tuesday with our deadlift. So all that to say, use AI responsibly. Never have it replace your critical thinking. You are ultimately responsible for the output. And so if it's a training program that you're going to be doing, you're going to eat that. But in the software world, if I put out AI slop, I'm responsible for that. It's my fault, right? I have to double check the work. And one thing that AI is good for is taking automated tests. So sometimes we'll ask it to also double check. I am analyzing, I am proofreading, and then I am having it do it itself. And then when I find an error, it can help me brainstorm and come up with a solution, right? I'm not saying that it can't fix its own problems. Sometimes it can't, but a lot of times together you can solve problems that it creates. Take that for what it's worth. That's my little AI nugget for the day. Second set, lateral raises. So let me provide some takeaways and things that I've learned just over the really honestly just like the past weekend of trying to reevaluate my training program for the last 2 weeks, looking at it, a water weight cut management thing. I have learned by researching and by talking with AI that peaking does not mean training harder. Peaking is planning out a large block of time, several months, and putting in the work early and during it. The last 2 to 4 weeks is not the time to be trying to put in the work. By the last 2 weeks, you should be well on your ramp down. You should be deloading. You should be recovering, right? So at this point, training harder is going to mean less performance rather than better performance. I obviously knew that I couldn't train while dehydrated, but that was a lesson that was, again, reaffirmed in this process. You can't be cutting water significantly while also trying to lift a heavy squat, right? So don't try and do it. You're going to get injured. Recovery is paramount, especially that last week, and it is way more important than one extra session. I mentioned, as we just talked about with my AI nugget, your critical thinking is greater than and should be more important than. You should put more emphasis on your critical thinking over blindly following AI advice. AI is a great tool for brainstorming, coming up with these plans, but ultimately you have to evaluate it, and you're the one who's giving it input to transform into output. So keep that in mind. And then the other thing I'm keeping in mind that I'm learning that it's a takeaway, hopefully I'm taking into this meet and then taking out of this meet, it's my first powerlifting meet. So I'm not expecting to win. I am expecting to learn a lot. And I think that mindset will help keep me level and help adjust and set expectations appropriately. Last set, lateral raises. Ugh. Couple more sets before we close. We've got a couple of these tricep pushdowns. Stick around. We will do our check-in and our physique update. I will wrap up the conversation about this final 2-week training prep. What we talked about, we fixed the program. We fixed the water weight and training issue. And so we're only working out Monday and Tuesday on that last week. And we're resting Wednesday through Friday. Saturday is weigh-in. Stay tuned. I will try. I don't know. Maybe I can get someone to do some footage at the meet. I would love to be able to show you guys that. It's still 2 weeks away, but I just want to put that on your radar. I will try and have some kind of extra video, at least talking about the results of the meet, and try to get some footage. We'll see what I can do. If you're interested in some of the AI strategy that I talked about, or if you want this training program, how maybe you're doing a meet and you're doing water weight manipulation and you just want me to give you these last 2 weeks in written form, comment. I will paste it in as a reply. And finally, subscribe if you want to see how the meet goes. If you want to see how the 20-week cut ends the week after, I will be going and getting my DEXA body scan so we can see how it compares to 20 weeks prior. So subscribe so you don't miss those videos. Let's get these last couple workouts. All right. Got tricep push down. I think we're shooting for like 10 of these. I'm going to leave it at 8 in the spirit of deloading. All right, last set, then we'll do our check-in physique update. Let's do it. Let's check in. See, we weighed in at 185.8, which is a big improvement from our last 2 Mondays. Last Monday, 191.5. Previous Monday, 190. So we had big water weight weekends the past 2 weekends. We did have an increase. If you look at, we were in our 184s Thursday through Friday. Well, I think so. Saturday was Valentine's Day. We had a nice little pasta dinner. So I think that bumped us up into the 186.4 on Sunday. I was expecting to weigh less today. I'll be honest. I peed so much yesterday and overnight. So I expected to be lower 185s or 184 into the 184s. But what, we'll take what we can get. So that's what that means, is that this is probably an average amount of water weight that I'm carrying right now. And 186 is a pretty good representation of my actual body weight. In fact, if we look at macro factor, it has me averaging 186.5. That's what they estimate my current weight as. So I think that is indicative of what my actual average weight should be. Now, that being said, I need to drop at least a pound. I need to be aggressive this week if I'm going to be able to drop down to 181.8. So I'm hoping I can get to 184, 183 next week so I can drop below that. The way I'm going to do that is this for the next 8 days. So starting yesterday, it was 9 days. I've adjusted my calorie target to be 1350. And I'm going to be shooting for 1350 to 1500 calories. My TDEE is about 2500, 2550. So that should, similar to the beginning of my cut when my TDEE was 2900 and I was eating 1900 calories, eating 1500 calories should put me at a 2-pound weight loss, ideally. We'll see. It's kind of one of those things where my adherence hasn't been great, but 1 week, I think I can do it for 1 week. I'm not going to be able to shoot for what I was doing originally, was shooting for 1600 during the week, knowing that the weekends would be higher. I'm not going to be able to have that luxury because I can't eat 1,000 calories in a day. I guess I could, but I feel famished afterwards. So 1350 feels like as low as I can go, 1500. So I have that range, 1350 to 1500. If I can stick to that every day for the next 8 days, I think that'll set me up. Starting yesterday, I met that. It was 1445. I'm also starting to track my sodium because, as you'll see in the water weight video that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to be tracking my sodiums and trying to hit certain sodium and carb levels, which I don't normally track. I normally just track protein and calories. But over the next 2 weeks, I am going to be paying attention to carbs and sodium so that I can cut those when I need to. I want to make sure I'm getting enough of them right now so that when I cut them, my body will react and release water. So yesterday was, I think, hopefully going to be indicative of what the rest of my time will look like. Almost 160 grams of protein, which is pretty good for getting less than 1500 calories. I did that with a bronze bar, coffee, yogurt, carrot. I entered this water. I thought this would track. I'm going to delete it because the tracking my water in here didn't translate to my Apple Health app. That's another thing that I'm tracking is my water. I'll show you that in a second, and I'll show you how I'm doing it. Mini sticks, some jerky. I'm going to be eating a lot of chicken breast. That's what it comes down to hit my goals. A lot of chicken breast starting yesterday. Chicken breast and salad, veggies, fruit. That's going to be the name of the game for this next week because that is the most bang for the buck that I can get. It's high protein, low calorie. I can load it up with sodium or I can take the sodium away. I did indulge. This is going to be the last treat that I indulge in. I had this protein pint ice cream last night. Peppermint gum during the day to help keep me full, some pickles and an apple. And I did have one Milano cookie that my daughter had and a caramel corn rice cake. So today will probably look similar. Hopefully I'll be able to have a little bit more food throughout the day since I won't have this 420 calories spent on a treat. This week, it's gonna hopefully be looking pretty similar. Shooting for that, I think the sodium target is around somewhere between 3 to 4, even up to 5,000 milligrams of sodium on the higher end. That's okay for me. And then I'm shooting for over 100 grams, somewhere, about 150. If I get a little bit more, that's fine as far as carbs go. And then protein, if I can get 180, great. It's going to be really hard to do on only 1350 calories. So honestly, shooting for just over 100. But if I can get 130 to 150 grams of protein, that'll be good. So that's the goal for this week. So far today, we've just had our coffee. Stay tuned to today. We'll do the physique update and stay tuned for other videos. I'm going to talk about what my water management strategy is going to be and how the sodium and carb and water tracking is going to play into that. I forgot to show you the water tracking. We'll show you that real quick. So I'm just using the health app. And when I have a LaCroix, I just enter it manually. It's 355 milliliters for a can of LaCroix. For coffee, it's like 8 ounces. So that's like 136, about 235 milliliters of water or whatever. So I'm shooting for like 2 to 3 liters per day right now. Just again, to try and have a slightly average or above average water, sodium, and carb intake. And then that way, when I do start cutting, it'll release.